What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about midpoints of segments. And the midpoint is exactly what you would think it would be. I mean, it's the middle point. So we're gonna go through this, fill out our notes, and we're gonna have a great idea of what a midpoint is, because we're gonna be awesome at this. We're gonna do a great job figuring out what midpoints are, and we're gonna be successful at this. So the midpoint of a segment, all right, that's your first blank. Midpoint is a segment that is a midpoint of a segment is a point that divides a segment into two equal parts. Okay, two equal parts or pieces. Okay, I like the word parts because we always talk about the equal parts, like part 1 plus part 2 within segments or angles or whatever. So a line, array, or a segment that intersects a segment, keyword intersects a segment at its midpoint, is said to bisect the segment. So B-I-S-E-C-T, bisect the segment. All right, and then that makes it called the segment bisector. Okay, or the angle bisector, or the could be a bunch of different things, but the key word is bisector. Okay, the diagram to the left, all right, B is the midpoint. So point B is the midpoint of AC, of segment AC. All right, and the line L, okay, line L is a segment bisector. Segment bisector of AC. So B cuts AC in half, and then also line L cuts AC in half. Okay, so let's look at these examples. So number 8 says if Q is the midpoint of PR, find the value of X. So we're only looking for the value of X. It says that Q is in the middle. All right, it says Q is in the middle. So think about midpoints being if A to B is part 1 and B to C is part 2, all right, we know that midpoints problems can be set up by saying part 1 is equal to part 2. So here, our part 1 is PQ, our part 2 is QR. So if we stay with that theme of part 1 equals part 2, all right, we have part 1. Instead of that, we can write 7x minus 16. And part 2, instead of that, we can say 4x plus 2. All right, and then we can go on and we can solve this problem. So one way may be to add 16 to both sides. We get 7x equals 4x plus 18. All right, and then subtract 4x. So when we subtract 4x from both sides, I'm just going to rewrite this up here. Subtract 4x to get that to cancel. Subtract 4x to get that to cancel. All right, we get that 3x equals 18, and x is equal to 18 divided by 3 is 6. Okay, so we had to find the value of x, which was 6. That's all that they wanted us to do. Okay, 9. If h is the midpoint of GI, then find GH. So here we don't have to just find x. Even more than that, we have to find what the length is, what the actual number of GH is. So again, we have our part 1, we have our part 2. We know this is the midpoint. All right, so we can set this problem up. We can say 5x plus 2 is equal to 9x minus 10. Okay, and again, we can solve this problem a number of different ways. All right, but I'm going to choose to, I'm going to add 10 to both sides. Add 10 to both sides. And I get 5x plus 12 is equal to 9x. Okay, and then I'm going to subtract my 5x over here. Subtract 5x. And that's going to give me 12 is equal to 4x. And when I divide by 4, that gives me x equals 3. All right, which is useful. But I am not done. The final thing they wanted me to show is they wanted me to show that what the length of GH actually is. So GH is 5x plus 2. But we notice that x is actually 3, so this is like 5 times 3 plus 2. Okay, 5 times 3 is 15 plus 2, and so GH is actually equal to 17 units, or 17, whatever it is, inches, feet, all right, whatever. But we just plug it back in. You plug this 3 back in for X, and you get the length of GH. Okay, what's really cool is, since I know that GH is 17, then HI's got to be 17, all right, because they are equal to one another. Okay, number 10, it says R is the midpoint of QS, then find QS, all right, and QS happens to be the whole thing. Okay, so again, we have our parts, part 1, I've got part 2, and so we know that we can set this up as part 1 is equal to part 2. So 2x plus 16 is equal to 5x minus 17. All right, so let's think about this problem. So I'm going to add 17. Solve it pretty much the same way as I did the previous problem. That gives me 2x plus 33 is equal to just 5x, because these cancel each other out. Then I subtract 2x from both sides. So subtract 2x, and that gives me 33 is equal to 3x. And you divide by 3, and you notice that that gives you x equals 11. All right? And so if x is 11, I can think about, all right, well, what is QR? That's 2 times 11 plus 16. So that's 22 plus 16. And so QR is actually, what is that going to be? 38. All right, so QR, part 1 is 38. Well, since part 1 is 38, part 2 also has to be 38. All right? And so what is QS? QS is both of those added together. So you got 38 plus 38, which is going to give us 76. All right? So our final answer is that QS is equal to 76. Okay, moving on. So let's look at some more examples, all right? And it says Q is the midpoint of PR, find the value of X. So again, we're going to set these up, all right? I know that since it's the midpoint, I can set both of my pieces equal to one another. All right, 7x minus 16 is equal to 4x plus 2. Go ahead and solve that one, and let's see what we can get, all right, on this one. Here we only have to find the value of X. Okay. Think about 9. So H is the midpoint of GI. Find GH. So here I got to plug back in and figure out what actually GH is. But I know because of the midpoint stuff, I can say 5x plus 2 is equal to 9x minus 10. Okay. And so if you want to go back and maybe rework those same exact problems that you had, all right, that's just one way that you study math. All right, I know y'all are probably thinking, Coach, we've already done these problems. All right, and I know that. But part of getting better at math is going back and reworking those same types of problems so that you can do it on your own without somebody telling you how to do that. Okay, so let's skip down to the one that we have not done. Okay, it says if G is the midpoint of FH, and then FH is equal to 6y minus 2, find y. So we know that somewhere in there, we're going to have to add in a y. All right, but I'm going to go back and think, okay, what do I know? I know G is the midpoint. I know this is part 1. I know this is part 2. Okay, what can I find out about this problem? All right. So I know that 4x plus 3 has got to equal 7x minus 12. Okay? And I can solve this. So if I add 12 to both sides, you get 4x plus 15 is equal to 7x. Subtract 4x from both sides, subtract 4x. You get 15 equals, what, 3x? And that you get x equals 5. Okay? So if I know x equals 5, I can plug it in. All right, so 4 times 5 is 20 plus 3, so that's 23, which means the other piece is 23. All right, and so the whole thing is going to give me 46 total. Okay, so I know that whole piece, I know that all of FH is equal to 46. Okay, so how can I use that? Well, they tell me up here that FH is equal to 6y minus 2. And then right here, I get that FH is actually 46. So since FH is 46 and FH is 6y minus 2, I can say that 6y minus 2 is equal to 46. And then I can solve for y. Okay, so if I add 2 to both sides, I get that 6y is equal to 48. And then, hey, look at that. When I divide by 6, I get that y is equal to 8. So just logically working through this problem, all right, using what I know and starting in a place that's familiar to me, that's going to help me out and help me get to my solution. Okay, so here's our examples. Okay, we have some things to think about. And what I want you guys to do is work through numbers 12, numbers 13, number 14, and 15 on our practice pages because these deal with the midpoint and a bisector. Remember, a bisector is really the same thing as the midpoint. All right, and let's just label our parts, use what we know about those pieces, and let's go from there.